Cool, hello, my name is Jess Green and I am a writer and performer. I write performance poetry and scripts for theatre and television, and today I'm going to be doing a workshop with you on the theme of poetry and lockdown. I would say that this workshop is for people who are 13 years and older, but if you are younger than that, then there is absolutely no reason why you can't have a go at this. To take part in this, then you're going to need something to write with and something to write on. I'm going to be talking to you for maybe like half an hour, but there's going to be places during this video where you can press pause and you can do the activity, and that might take you however long. So I guess this will maybe give you like an hour, hour and a half, couple of hours worth of activity, depending on how much you want to write, and that's completely up to you. Now, when I talk about poetry, that tends to mean different things to different people. I write performance poetry, which just means that I perform the poetry that I write. There are hundreds, thousands of performance poets out there, and they've never been more accessible because you can watch them on YouTube, you can listen to them on SoundCloud, and there tends to be a real range of performance poetry. So there are poets who are really influenced by traditional work, stuff that you read in books that's been written for hundreds of years, that you study in school, that you get out of the library. And then there are poets who are influenced more by hip-hop and rap and the rhythms and rhyme schemes of hip-hop and rap. And then there are poets who are taking a little bit from both ends of that sliding scale. So I thought I would warm us up by reading a poem to you, one of my poems. So this poem is called Not Something That Other People Do, and it is about my home city of Leicester. It's not royal bones below the place we used to park our cars. It's not the streets at a standstill, footballers and the bus, the trophy held up in Vicky Park. It's not knowing that we've scored from the roar of the crowd over the canal to my back garden, and it is definitely not Benedict Cumberbatch in the cathedral reading a Carol Ann Duffy poem. Although it is a bit. It's a 4-year-old looking up at a 50-foot dinosaur. It's 2010's X Factor winner in the sold-out Christmas pantomime at De Montfort Hall. It's a raucous audience at Drag Queen Bingo in a pub theatre off the Narber Road. It's fear-free environment, anything goes. It's doing all the things that you know that your kids would die from embarrassment from if they could see you now, but look at you go. It's unlocking a moment of joy in a silent child. A family learning how to play together for the first time. It's the teenager finally finding a place for all those feelings he so desperately didn't want you to see. It's illuminated stilt walkers, coffee shop basements, neon lights on dusky skylines. It's howling, roaring, pin-sharp acoustics, polished brass and remorseless steam. 2,000 years of history, haunted 14th century timber frames breathing fresh life into old stories. It's not saying art for all because it ticks a funding box. Gets you a nice write-up in The Guardian. It's for the people who don't even want art. Stick 2 fingers up at art. Say, what has art ever done for me? For the people who would not know where to begin with art, where to even find art, because art was the teacher who told me that I could not draw and sent me to sit in the corridor for 2 hours instead of doing art. It is not over there. It's not on the other side. It is not something that other people do. It is not right or wrong, not only if you speak in the correct language or agree with us or read the notes before attending the session. It is not only if you can successfully navigate the networking event, 2 small teacup clattering through the skin-crawlingly awkward chit-chat. It is not 50 quid. It's not only in London. It's not, did you hear that programme about it on Radio 4? No, I did not. It is not, have you read Chekhov? Although sometimes it is, and that's fine for those guys who like Chekhov. They are welcome here too. But it is in you, and it is messy and stupid and rude and delicate and precious, and if you feel it, then feed it and bring it to us, because we are an island of red in an ocean of blue. We are swimming against the tide when 4 million children live below the poverty line. We are not giving up when it feels too tough, when all the fight has gone out of us, with fewer and fewer schools having the time or the cash to teach creativity in their classrooms. Well, that's how we pick up the slack. plug the growing gap between the haves and the cannot afford tos in these dangerous and difficult times when freedom of expression has never felt so threatened. We open our arms wider. We have enough space at our tables. We want to hear your stories, so write them down, play them out. On our stages, in our studios, we are well used to playing the underdog here, and here we leave no one behind. We build our communities on the rare belief that art is a fundamental right. The great leveller that lifts all from Clarendon Park to the Belgrave Road. We know success is no accident. It begins with a moment and grows with the relentless cultivation of talent. You don't have to be an unremitting extrovert to join this. There is no club to sign up to, no clique to hang out with. We just need you. It is okay to switch off the news for the evening. We feel it too. So bring us your fears, your dreams and your heartbreak. Take a break from it all for a bit. There is a door here, a seat, a ticket. The world is raging outside, so come in. Give us your time, and together we just might change it. So there is a version of that poem which was directed by Emily Alton and put together by Curve, and it's on YouTube, and there'll be a link below this video to be able to watch that if you would like to listen to it again. Okay, so let's get started. So I have warmed us up with a poem, and now I'm going to try and warm you up by doing a quick writing exercise to introduce yourselves. I'm going to imagine that we are in one big room, one big classroom or theatre or library, and we're going to have a chance to introduce ourselves to each other. And we're going to do that by doing this. So you should have your thing that you're going to write with, whether that is paper and pen or tablet or phone or whatever. And I'm just going to ask you 5 questions, and I want you to write the answers down. Okay, you can pause the video in between each of the questions and take as long as you need to answer them. If you want to think about it for 30 seconds or 5 minutes, it's up to you. Your first question is, if you were a kind of weather, what weather would you be? If you were a kind of weather, what weather would you be? If you want to think about that, then you can pause the video now. My second question is, if you were a kind of food, what food would you be? Try and be as specific as possible. If you're pizza, then there is a big difference between like a stuffed crust meat feast pizza and like a gluten-free, low-fat Brussels sprout pizza. So think about being as specific as possible. If you were a food, what kind of food would you be? Next question is, if you were an object, what object would you be? Now that could be anything. Would you be like a wind-up radio, a bowling ball, a book, a hat stand, a mug, you could be anything. If you were an object, what object would you be? Next question is, if you were going to be a piece of furniture, what furniture would you be? Would you be a table, a bean bag, a chair? But think about, again, being specific. So what kind of state would you be in? Would you be like a really luxurious chaise lounge, is a word I can't say, in like a stately home? Or would you be like a comfy armchair that's got loads of holes in it and it's like the cat's favourite armchair? So if you were a bit of furniture, what furniture would you be? And your last question is, if you were a view from a high place, what would the view be of? If you were a view from a high place, what would the view be of? Again, be as specific as possible. That is probably something that I'm going to repeat quite a lot during this workshop. Try and be as specific as possible. Would you be, if you were going to be a view of the sea, well, there's loads of different kinds of seas. There's like the stormy North Sea. There's like a beautiful crystal clear Caribbean Sea. Try and be as specific as possible to really describe who you are. When you have written down those 5 answers describing yourself, we're going to do our first activity, which is you are going to turn these into a poem. All you're going to do is you're going to write a poem which is called I Am. And then you are going to put these in whatever order you like, and you can write as much or as little as you want. So you could have, I am a storm in the middle of the night. I am a chicken burger with extra mayo. I am a beautiful chaise lounge in a stately home in the 16th century. Or you could add lots and lots and lots of information to them. So you could maybe give us like a whole stanza of poetry about each different question, which really tells us who you are. But I'd say this is like a warm-up, so definitely don't spend more than, 10-15 minutes on it. But equally, if you just want to do like 1 line per question and you want to just spend a couple of minutes on this, then that is fine too. So I'm going to let you pause the video now and go away and write your introductory poem. Maybe you could go and find someone in the house to introduce yourself to in this really poetic way, even if they know you really well, even if it's your mum. You might not have introduced yourself with a poem before. Brilliant. So I hope you've written your introductory poems. Maybe you've gone away and introduced yourself to your mum, your cat, your dog, whoever. We are only 5 minutes in and you've already written a poem. That is brilliant. We are now going to get on to our main theme for today, and that is poetry and lockdown. So we're going to be writing about lockdown, how it's made you feel, the good things about it, the bad things about it, the things that you've unexpectedly enjoyed, the things you have really missed and are still really missing, and all the kind of like feelings that go with that. So what I want you to do is I want you to finish a sentence for me. Lockdown makes me feel. And then I want you to write down as many emotions as lockdown has made you feel since March. I know that at the beginning I felt scared, but I also felt excited. At times I've been really frustrated, I've been angry, I've been anxious. At times I've found it fun because I've had more time to hang out with my dog and watch films and read and do things that I enjoy. So it's made me feel lots of different things over the past however long it's been. I think in Leicester we're at like the 300 mark because we've never really come out of lockdown. But I want you to write down as many emotions as you can think of, as many emotions as you have felt over the past 10 months. So lockdown makes me feel. And maybe spend, 3 to 5 minutes on this. Try and get, I'd say, at least 5, but maybe aim for 10. And you can pause the video now. When you've written down your emotions, what I'd like to do is I'd like you to pick one. It doesn't matter whether that is a positive one or a negative one. You're going to pick one emotion that you're going to write about. Later on, you're going to have an opportunity to do a different emotion, so don't worry too much which one you pick now. If I was doing this, I would probably pick frustration, because frustration is something that I felt a lot. And what I want you to do is you're going to have a go at describing your emotion using the 5 senses. It's always at this point that I forget what the 5 senses are. But if I was doing frustration, I would say frustration smells like, looks like, tastes like, feels like, sounds like. And then you're going to finish off those sentences. But what I want is for each of those sentences to relate back to being in lockdown. Okay, so for example, if I was going to do frustration tastes like beans on toast for dinner again, because before lockdown I used to really love cooking, I used to really enjoy cooking, but when, it's something about like having no choice but having to cook your own dinner every day because you can't go out for dinner, you can't do anything more exciting, you can't go to your friend's house for dinner or anything like that. So kind of losing my interest and my spark for cooking and having the same thing for dinner every day. And notice that I've tried to be as specific as possible again. I've tried to make sure that that line couldn't be written by anyone but me, because it really reflects my experience. If I was going to be really general, I would just say frustration tastes like the same thing for dinner again, but I tried to make it specific because the thing that I'm eating a lot of is beans on toast. I'll give you another couple of examples. If I was going to do sounds like, I would do frustration sounds like my husband doing another university lecture on Zoom. He's in his second year of university and he loved his first year, and he kind of was really enjoying going into university and going to lectures and everything, and now it's all on Zoom, which he finds frustrating, and he's just next door, and I try and do a lot of my stuff, and he's doing his stuff, and sometimes the house is a bit noisy from us both doing our stuff. And then another example, a last example I'll give you is, I don't know about you, but in lockdown I'm just wearing the same clothes every day. So I might have frustration feels like the same soft, bobbly tracksuit bottoms. So again, being specific, trying to make it very specific to my own experience. So have a go at this now. Pick one of your emotions and you're going to describe it using the 5 senses, but make sure that each sentence relates back to being in lockdown and that feeling of frustration or sadness or happiness or excitement, whatever it is. So you can pause the video now and, I don't know, spend like 10 minutes on this. Okay, what we're going to do now is something called free writing, and you might have done this before if you've been to a creative writing workshop before, or if you've got a great English teacher who's perhaps talked to you about this before. But this is essentially just writing without worrying too much, writing basically a stream of consciousness that nobody's going to see, nobody's going to mark, no one's going to give you a grade on. It's kind of just a process to help you to be creative. Now, I went to a workshop a couple months ago with a brilliant poet called Caroline Bird, and she had this great idea about the writing process. Now, lots of writers, we write down our first draft and then we come back to it and we do our second draft. And our second draft, we often really edit a poem down, so there's only like a small amount of it left. And her idea was that for your second draft, you shouldn't be editing, you should be adding more. And she described it as walking back through the world of the poem and pulling more down off the shelves. So your second draft should be twice the size of your first draft. And then it's your third draft that you start editing down and looking at streamlining what you've got. So if you look at what you've got, which is these 5 lines which describe how you have felt during lockdown, using your specific ideas and examples, you could say that was a poem, and it is a poem. It's a 5-line poem. But what I want you to do now is, as Caroline Bird describes, walk back through the world of your poem, pulling more things down off the shelves. So if I was going to do with my poem about frustration, I might write down more about, a bit like what I said to you about, I used to really like cooking and I've kind of really lost my interest in cooking. I might describe the time that I was trying to film one of these videos and my husband was trying to do some of his university stuff in the next room, and just writing down as much as you can about the things you've experienced in lockdown and the way it's made you feel. Don't worry about it being a poem, don't worry about making it rhyme, but now I want you to give yourself, you could even set a timer on your phone, give yourself 3 minutes or 5 minutes, I'd say 5 minutes maximum because otherwise your hand's going to get worn out, to just write down whatever you want. And the hardest thing is to make yourself keep writing, okay? So don't stop writing. Don't worry if it's just nonsense, if it's rubbish, if you're thinking, oh, no one's going to be interested in this. This isn't even poetry. The important thing is the process of just doing it. So I want you to set yourself a timer on your phone and give yourself between 3 minutes and 5 minutes to just write more about that feeling in lockdown. So I would write about frustration, maybe you would write about excitement, fear, anxiety, whatever you like, whatever your emotion was. Give yourself that time now to just do some free writing. Off you go. So I hope you really enjoyed having that time to do some free writing, to really open up your brain and not worry too much about what you're writing, but just to kind of write. I know that some people really enjoy that and some people find it frustrating, so I hope that you enjoyed it. What we're going to do now is we're going to go back to that 5-sentence sense activity, and you're going to do it again, but this time you're going to do it for an emotion opposite to the one that you did before. So if you did a negative emotion before, you're now going to do a positive one, and vice versa. If you did a positive one before, you're now going to do a negative one. So I did frustration before, which is a negative emotion. So now I'm going to pick a positive emotion that I have felt during lockdown, and I'm going to go for contentment. I think there's a lot to be said for contentment, for just feeling content with your lot. And I think particularly in the second and third lockdowns, because I have no choice but to be at home, I have to be at home, it's given me so much more time. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed doing is spending more time with my dog. I love my dog. I've got a rescue street dog from Romania, and he's lovely. So I might write a couple of sentences about spending time with him. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I might write, contentment feels like the softness of my dog's ears. Sounds like the wind across the park at 7 a.m. Because we've been doing lots of walking during lockdown, because that's kind of all you can do. And then the last one I came up with, because me and my husband have our birthday on the same day, and our birthdays were in April. And again, like, we were in lockdown, we couldn't go anywhere. So like a lot of people, we had a lockdown birthday. So I think I would write down, contentment tastes like birthday cake for two, because I didn't have to share my birthday cake with anyone but him. So I want you to have a go at this now. Those 5 sentences again. But this time choosing an emotion which is opposite to the one that you chose before, but something that you have genuinely felt. Like, don't feel that you have to make anything up. Finishing off those sentences relating back to lockdown. Maybe take like 10 minutes doing this, and then we'll come back. Okay, so you know what I'm going to say. You're now going to do a bit of free writing. So 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, however long you want to write more freely about that emotion, and the things in lockdown that have made you feel that emotion. A good way to come at this is to take one of your lines. So I might have, contentment sounds like the wind across the deserted park at 7 a.m. And you could use that as your title, and then just write about that for however long you like. Walking is something that I have just loved doing during lockdown, and I've discovered new parks, and just going out with the dog every day has been wonderful, and probably really good for my mental health as well. So I could write lots about that. So however long you like, I'd say no more than 5 minutes to do some free writing, walking through the world of your poem again, taking more things down off the shelves, and I'll see you back here in a second. Okay, so just before I give you our final task for this session, I'm going to read you a poem. I first came across this poem a few months ago when I was in a workshop with Vanessa Kasule. She is a wonderful poet. You should look her up. She is published by Burning O Books, who publish lots of performance poets, and she was Bristol Poet Laureate last year, so she's fantastic. And she brought this poem to a workshop she did with us, which is by a poet called Tanya Adobe. I don't believe that it has a title. Vanessa called it the home poem, but I think that is the title that Vanessa has given it. But this is Tanya Adobe's poem, and it goes like this. I hear you. I wouldn't want them to write about me either. They would call 12 people in a 3-bedroom cramped or overcrowded. I call it a cute way to use space. And yes, my mother worked hard and late, making money and making do, but she kept prayers on tapes playing while we slept. Blessings penetrated our dreams, one of the ways we kept safe. I gained Auntie Ruby from Trinidad, the closest thing to Grandma. She would sit me lovingly between her lap, running the comb across my scalp as the hair fell on either side, braided and adorned it with beads. Which is to say, she gave my walk some rhythm. Which is to say, my beads would spud each other in agreement when I shook my head or nodded a yes. There's been 5 in the bed, and I've been the little one who says roll over, the big one who says keep still, the one in between with no say. There was a village under my roof, in my block and in my ends. Everyone knew my name. Anonymous was an anomaly. The boys by the lift scared strangers. I've thought of them as my own personal bodyguards. Only the bravest would reach the top floor. Top floor taught me freedom. Top floor taught me fearless. Top floor showed me London, showed me limitless. Weed reminded me of home. I know all about marinating somewhere for too long. I slipped away many nights like meat off the bone. Soft ute, hot foot in search of space, but never finding love like the one from a cramped home. I hope no privileged person has cause to write about me. They will talk about my childhood and never quite understand that all the while I was quite happy. So I love that poem. I think it's such a joyous piece of writing, and somebody celebrating all the best things that they love about their life, that if somebody else was writing about it, they might not see how great those things were. You know, she talks about things that if somebody else was writing about them, then they might talk about them negatively. They would call 12 people in a 3-bedroom cramped or overcrowded. I call it a cute way to use space. She talks about her mum having to work hard and late, but she kept prayers on tapes playing while we slept. She talks about, I love the boys by the lift, scared strangers. I thought of them as my own personal bodyguards. I think that's really nice. And what I want us to do is to use a similar approach for our own poems. So, writing about lockdown and acknowledging all the things that are difficult about lockdown. You know, we are missing seeing our friends. We can't just go out and do whatever we want. Maybe you are missing school, maybe you're not missing school. Maybe you have family that you haven't seen for ages. And talk about those things in the poem. But what I also want you to do is focus on all the joy of lockdown. Anything that makes you feel content or happy. You know, things that have really made me happy are walking my dog, reading more than ever, watching loads of films and television, watching really trashy television and not feeling bad about it because, like, I've got nothing else to do. So focusing on the difficult things, but the unexpected joys that nobody else can know about because they're your personal joys. If somebody else was writing about you in lockdown, they might write about it miserably, but they don't know all the things that have brought you joy. Okay, so you have 2 ways of approaching this. If you are someone who feels really confident about writing, then go away and just write your poem and don't worry about it. Nobody's going to be marking this, I don't think. I'm certainly not going to be marking this. I just want you to write something for the joy of writing. So maybe you've looked at everything that we've done up until now, and you've looked at Tanya's poem and you feel like, yes, I can definitely go and write something. I understand what's being asked of me and I'm going to go away and write something. Great. Go do that. Take as much time as you need. If you are someone who feels slightly less confident about getting going, then I would suggest this writing framework. That you start your lines with lockdown is, and then take something from your negative poem. I might have lockdown is baked beans on toast for dinner again. And then after that you have, but it's also the wind across the deserted park at 7 a.m. Next line, lockdown is my husband doing yet another university lecture on Zoom, but it also tastes like birthday cake for 2. I realise both the examples I've given you rhyme, and actually one of the things I was going to say to you is don't worry about rhyming. And absolutely that still stands, don't worry about rhyming. You can get so focused on rhyme that you paint yourself into a bit of a corner. I shouldn't have given you examples that rhyme. But I hope that makes sense. So you take lockdown is something negative, but it's also, and then something positive. Have a go at this. And if you want to, write your first draft of your poem, and then in a couple of days' time, maybe you want to do that thing that Caroline Bird says, which is walk through the world of your poem again and pull more things down off the shelves. And then maybe a couple of days after that, you want to look at it again, and you might want to neaten it up and edit it, and you might want to take out some of the but it's also's, or you might think, oh, that line doesn't work, or whatever. Or you might just write for the next 10 minutes, and that's great, and that'll be that. Anything else I was going to say to you? I'd love to see your poems. If you want to send them to me, my email address is jess_green@hotmail.co.uk. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at Jess Green Poet. So if you wanted to send me any of your poems, I would absolutely love to see them, because it's always interesting to see what people are writing about. So go away and write your poems. I hope that you enjoy your writing. I hope you've enjoyed this. I have. And let me know what it is that you've chosen to write about.